What's up, everybody? I'm comedian Michael Halcomb, and today we get to chat with comedian Mike Byrd. You're not going to want to miss this, so stay tuned.
It's all messed up, yeah. Everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.
Hey, everybody, I'm Michael Halcomb, and this is the Messed Up the Setups podcast. With me today, comedian Mike Byrd. Mike, how's it?
Good, man. All things good over here. I find difficulty complaining.
Nice. You're one of the few then. Everybody loves complaining, dude. Especially comedians, right? That's what we do, is complain about
Probably
everything.
70% of being a comic is being upset about something. So maybe I'm going to be on the way out.
So, Mike, tell everybody, just where are you? Where you live? Where are you based out of?
I'm a Charlotte comic. I live out in the boonies. I live in Gastonia and do all my comedy work in Charlotte because Gastonia doesn't appreciate humor. I started down on the coast. A lot of my work was around coastal North Carolina. I was in Wilmington to begin with. Shout out to Dead Crow Comedy Room in Wilmington, where I got my start, and then I've been all over the place since then.
Right on. So, how did you get into comedy? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, I was one of those kids that I think fifth grade I won class clown. I don't know. They give out certificates for that. Might be encouraging the wrong behavior. I don't know if the teachers are aware of that. They're like, "Oh yeah, good job not listening."
Yeah, right.
But
It's like the one award you don't want your kid to get, class clown.
yeah, I think I was pretty good at doing the one-liner, like not getting detention. I would just say the one-liner in between the lesson so that she'd be like, "What was that?" Oh, yeah, Thomas Jefferson or whatever. And yeah, so that was kind of where I got started. I'm the youngest kid in my family, so I feel like I've always liked to bring a little bit of levity when maybe there would be conflict of other siblings or whatever.
Right. How many siblings do you have?
I had a brother and a sister.
All right. Older, younger?
Older. My sister's about 10 years older than me, and then my brother's four-ish. Yeah.
So you're in the middle. I mean, your
I'm
brother's 4?
no 4 years older than me.
You're
My
not.
parents are 27 and 28, and I'm 35, which I'm still trying to work through.
Dude, that's wild. You gotta, I don't know, your sister's 50, you're 40, and your younger brother's 4, and you're the middle child.
And our parents are twitching in the corner.
4-ish years younger than you. So you were the middle child, though. I mean,
I'm
you
the
are.
baby. He's older than me. My brother's 4 years older than me, and my sister's about 9, 10 years older than me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are y'all close?
Yeah, we're just really different. We're really different. We couldn't be probably three more different people. So yeah, my brother's like a hunter and a outdoors type of guy, and I like the outdoors, but just in a different sort of way. I don't kill anything when I'm out there. That's not. That doesn't
That's funny.
add to the experience for me.
We have a friend who was saying the other day, I like how she put it. She said, I'm not outdoorsy. I don't want to go hike or camp. I'm outsidey. I like being outside, sitting on the porch and drinking tea or something. Yeah.
Just gibberish. It's like when people say that they're spiritual. It's like, what are you talking about?
So you were the class clown. When did you do your first stand-up set? When did you get on stage the first time?
My first stand-up set, I started in 2012, and it was when I was in college at UNCW, and they had Last Seahawk Standing. I don't know if Last Comic Standing is still a thing anymore, but they kind of ripped that off. And yeah, so I thought, yeah. And I pick on people for this all the time now because of the gall it takes to be like, I'm doing my first ever stand-up, and I think that I'm better than other people who've been doing stand-up. But I didn't think of it that way. I was just like, I'll do stand up now. And what I did was I signed up on the sheet and then I broke the pen and threw it away. Because that was my symbolic thing. I'm going to do this and I'm not going to back out of it. So then I did not do well. I had a lot of jokes about, just half finished ideas. I think one of my favorite things that I've never worked on is that when I went and did a study abroad in Spain, I had a bit, and it was basically just that the American accent is attractive to people in other countries in the same way that like a French or Spanish accent
Right.
is attractive here. And I just thought that was a funny thing to play with. It wasn't funny when I did it, but it's a good idea.
Dude, I've thought about that a lot. Like, I wonder if that is the case. Like, is the
Yeah.
American accent attractive or is it repulsive?
It's probably not good. It's probably they don't like it. Maybe I was just charming in some way that they appreciated. When I studied abroad in Spain, they called me Oso Panda for panda bear.
So, what were you studying over there?
My degree is in Spanish. You might can see it a little bit around my head back there, or it might be the other one. But yeah, that was the product of being in school for 2-ish years and some change and not knowing what degree I wanted. And then being like, I have the most credits in this, let me get out of here. And so, yeah, I did study abroad in Spain for a summer and met a lot of really cool people. Really, one of just a handful of times I've been out of the country. But yeah, Spanish is my degree, which I've always thought is the worst thing. Like, could you pick something where more people have more experience than me possible? There's only 14 million Spanish native speakers in the country, but I'll be
Are
the
you?
honky that does
Are
it.
you
I was at one point in time, but that's since left me. But yeah, I have a 4-year degree, and I guess that means something, you
nice?
know?
I mean, that seems like it'd be good on the job front to have outside of comedy, although maybe in comedy too. I don't know. Um, interest. So you've been at comedy like for about 12 years then. You said 2012 ish. Yeah, 12,
Yeah,
13
I,
years.
I I think in a couple months I'll be 13, 13-year
Nice.
old comedian.
And like, what have been some major takeaways? Like, let's jump into like joke writing. And for those of you watching or listening, Mike runs an online sort of joke workshopping group a couple times a week. I've started to jump into that. It's a really good little group. So we just work on joke writing. I'm curious, like for the 12, 13 years that you've been doing this, what are like one or two major takeaways? Like if a newbie is watching this, like how do I work on jokes? Like what are like the top one or two pieces of advice you could like maybe give?
Yeah, I think a lot of the beginning stages are kind of finding your voice. They say that for like the first 5 years, you kind of get comfortable on stage, and then probably for the next 5 years, you figure out what exactly your angle on things is. I think that's probably the hardest part for people is where you go, well, I have this funny idea, I realize that Skittles and Tic Tacs are opposite. You know what I mean? You have this thing where you notice something but then you say, well, what is that? There's concepts and then there's ways that you make it about you without talking about you, if that makes sense. So finding kind of perspective, I would say, is a big thing. And a lot of that comes from like, what is the Venn diagram of things that I'm finding funny? If I'm trying to
Mm,
be Jerry Seinfeld and just make observations about everything, I think that was one of the weirdest things about that whole thing is that we did learn about Seinfeld, but his material in the cold light of day is just kind of going, all right, here's the things that I think about the
right.
world. But his character ends up being this guy that's like kind of a little bit ticked off about everything all the time. He's bothered by little stuff. You know what I mean? And so finding your corner of the world through your perspective, I think, is probably big step number one. And then there's a million and one little structure things that I obsess over nowadays after getting to that place.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Have you been able to pin down like your angle, perspective, voice, persona? Like what would you describe your own like comedic angle or perspective as?
Yeah, I think this is one of these things where it's kind of hard to put it into just a few words, but I would say when a lot of my stuff ends up being like a wordplay type of thing and then self-deprecating. So when I land in like the punchline part of so I have a premise, I have a big long file that I throw every premise into, and I go, this is something that I thought was funny. That is kind of my beginning place because that's where all of my material starts coming from, is just things that I noticed that made me laugh to begin with. And a lot of times I feel like it's a little bit it's the self-deprecating thing, but the way that I learned about like being funny and like communicating with my friends on that level was like picking on each other. Like 90s, it'd
Right.
be like, I had to defend myself as a fat kid,
Yeah.
So I'm like noticing things about other people. And so I think then it comes out of a place of like, what are the characters and what are the things that I can kind of poke holes in, if that makes sense. I just had a thought on this the other day, and I don't know that it's incredibly unique, but it's just like when you think about a premise, think about what the prevailing opinion from everybody else would be, and then kind of what would be if you would disagree with that, or if you can take the perspective of going against that, then justify it to people. You kind of land in a place where you're going, this is something that I can argue from and try and convince people on. And I think a lot of company comes out of that. So that's a lot of my material, I'd say.
Yeah. So I talk with like all the comedians who come on here. This is one of the things I frequently am talking. I'm kind of like obsessed with joke writing, and I'm obsessed with like the persona thing, like the angle, the perspective. And comedian Mike Lucas, he's got this little like formula where he says like when it comes to persona, like you should be able to say Michael Halcomb, for example, the blank guy, and then fill
Oh,
in the
okay.
blank, which I think is a little like a useful exercise. And two things on that. One, I think that we all have a multitude of voices like knocking around inside of us, right? Like I'm a dad, a father, a coach, a teacher, like a comedian, a scholar, a theologian, all kinds of stuff, right? And like I think those voices contribute maybe to like a meta voice. So that's a word, but they all speak
Yeah.
into that. And it might be that the voices like shift, like emphasis shifts, so that my persona shifts a little bit. I don't know, but I've kind of been leaning into this idea of like a multitude of voices rather than just like one fixed voice, because that's like how my life operates. Like, you know, when I go from one context or domain to another, like the persona shifts even without me realizing it necessarily.
Mm,
So like right when I'm at home, like I'm speaking somewhat differently than when I'm like up in front of a classroom teaching than when I'm, I don't know, on a comedy stage versus when I'm doing whatever. So I think
yeah.
the voice is like malleable a little bit because we have a, I also think that like for me, I'm like the transparent mess. Like that's kind of like where a lot of my comedy comes out of. Like I'm
Yeah.
just like just in real life, I'm a super transparent dude. Like I kind of wear everything on my sleeve, like and that causes a lot of problems for me. You know, so I think a lot of my jokes flow out of that. Like, oh, I said this and it got me in trouble, or I thought this and it has the potential to create a mess or a problem for me. So like that little formula, Michael Halcomb, the blank guy, I think it's like a nice little like thing to try to use. Michael Halcomb, the transparent mess guy, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
like
anyway,
that.
yeah,
I like that. I think a lot of it has to do with just being introspective and self-aware. It's
right.
something that I've been throwing kicking around in my head for a long time, that a lot of people are self-aware and then don't make any changes. Which I think is like a really fun paradox. Where a lot of people are like, you know what? The thing about me is you can't tell me nothing. It's like, well, you sound like you're aware that you have some things that are wrong and you should probably change them yourself. You know what I mean?
You got the jaw or whatever the you got that down.
That's it.
Oh,
I see it as a Facebook status. You know what I mean? Some people need to understand that's just the way I am.
so, all right. So we got a tip on joke writing there. Like, what about performing? Like, what's been one or two things? Like, newbies watching this, they're thinking like, I want to go up on stage like you did that first time. Like, what would be like your top one or two tips to give them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, for me, I found out over a long period of time that my safety net is the material. So I think you can get away with a lot of, so there's a couple ways. You can get away with a lot of bad writing by being a good performer, and you can get
Mm,
away with being a bad performer by having good writing. And I feel like if you land somewhere in the middle and you're like, I worked on the material and I am delivering it in a way where at least I'm not monotone. I can't really tolerate the one liner monotone because I'm
mm,
like, maybe the writing is good, but there's going to be 10 other people that are going to have your character.
Right.
So I think figuring out the way that you've been funny with your friends in the past and maybe ask people how that goes. Like, how do I come across to you whenever I've made you laugh in person type of thing? Because I think the sort of gold standard for people in stand up is to go, how do I get to be as funny as I thought I was when I was hanging out with my friends? And I've had this thought and talked to people about this a lot before, which is the problem of trying to be as funny
Yeah.
as you are with your friends is that your friends have part of the formula.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's what makes stand up hard is that you're going, let me generate humor out of thin air or out of the situation or conveying something that happened to me in a clear enough way just by myself on stage. So I think a lot of that has to do with like tapping into that personality, but also not being like, oh, well, you had to be there. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
nothing worse than being like telling this story and then it doesn't go anywhere. It's this circle thing. You start off, I was at the grocery store, and you tell the whole story. You're like, yeah, so I was at the grocery store. It's like that's the end and the beginning. You know what I mean? So it's like it's got to go somewhere, but you gotta have the wherewithal, stage presence type of stuff. I think a big thing was when I took a public speaking class, they gave me the tip that you're not coming across as nervous as you think you are.
Mm,
I was literally shaking the first time I went on, like in the comedy competition and first time in stand up. I was literally like, oh, you guys can see me like vibrating basically. And people were like, nah, you seem pretty calm. I was like, oh, okay. So that's something you can cling on to. You can say, I'm nervous, but I don't feel nervous. And I still get this feedback. I'll be in a big gig, like big thing, within the context of what I'm doing and people will be like, "Oh, it really seemed like you were felt comfortable up there." I was like, "I was uncomfortable," and I think that's a big key. You know?
oh, I lost you for a second. You there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where did I leave you?
You're saying I'll be in the midst of a gig, like, and that's where you cut off.
Yeah, yeah. And people will give you feedback. They'll be like, "You seemed comfortable," and I was like, "I was uncomfortable." The truth is the combination of everybody's perspective, I guess. So
Right.
if you say, "Well, I was uncomfortable and I didn't look uncomfortable," why don't we take the net gain between those two things?
Right. Like, so one of the things that I'm like big on, like, I mentioned before, I like obsess over joke writing. Like, I'm just infatuated with it. And, to a degree, performing too, like comedic, like mind hacks, like mental things, like tricks I can do to like hack the nerves or whatever. Like, so these like comedic mind hacks, I blog a lot about those. And like reframing has been a big thing. So like a lot of times people will say like, "Oh, you're in comedy? Like, how do you do that? Like, don't you get nervous?" And it's like, "No, I don't. I don't get nervous." Like, and one of the ways that I've reframed that is like that's just adrenaline. Like,
Hmm.
and like it's totally normal to have like an adrenaline rush before you do something, right? Like, and even just that little like reframing has been a big shift for me. Is like I know as soon as I'm, before they call my name to come up, no, I'm not nervous. This is adrenaline. This is good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna channel this.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk more about that, offline or whatever else. The I am one of the most anxious people probably walking around. And so I'm constantly doing this. I'm gonna keep saying I've had this idea and don't have a bit for it yet, but this idea, one of my biggest played song every year on like Spotify Wrapped is this song by Marconi Union called Weightless, and all it is like scientifically proven to make you calm down. So it's not even really music as much as it is like what your heart rate should be. They're like playing
Oh,
the drum at the beat that your heart should be going and playing like synthesizers. And so when I have these headphones or some other headphones on before stage, if I'm like a little too riled up, I'll do that. And
huh.
then another thing is Amy Cuddy, I believe her name is. I think she was a Harvard professor, and she has a book called Presence. And it's
Mm,
just about body positioning and the relation to how you feel instead of like traditionally you would think of it as I am feeling anxious, so I'm holding my body this way. Like I'm curled up, I'm like bouncing my knees, I'm walking around, pacing, whatever else. And she basically put forth the idea and did some studies on the fact that if you're doing the opposite, like putting yourself, taking up more space, being bigger, sitting still, pretending to be confident is essentially the gist of it.
Right.
Your body is going to respond, and you're going to start to calm down. So I feel less nervous than I did when I started, but to kill those things off, I have a lot of little hacks. So I love that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. So just make yourself bigger,
Like you see a bear.
right? Do some man spreading there, like just yeah. Wow, interesting. So that sounds like a fascinating book. Presence. I have to look into that. But yeah, that's something I write about often. Just like the psychological and emotional aspects, even just the linguistic aspects. I'm really into. One of my degrees is in linguistics, so I think that contributes to my obsession with working with words and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I used to. So I grew up listening to hip hop, dude, and I listened like the rap group that I was really like into was Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Yeah.
And they like their thing is rapping really fast, so you gotta pay attention. And I think like a part of my obsession with words and language comes from them. Like
Yeah.
as a teenager, I was like, oh, it's crazy how he just like made this word and this word rhyme and they don't rhyme. Like he's just like bending words and manipulating language to, you know, like achieve some desired end. And that's a lot in a lot of cases precisely what comedians are doing, right? Like
Yeah.
making the language work for them and doing sort of like language voodoo and language tricks. And yeah, I love that stuff, dude. It's fun
Yeah,
to me.
it's almost like the what do they call them, mentalists or some magicians I think do stuff like this. It's like something about this language pattern is lulling you to sleep. Like
Right,
if you ever been at the fair where they hypnotize the people, he'll just start talking slower and something about the pattern of the way. First of all, the people are suggestible. I think that's where he starts off, but
right.
once he gets his group of people, which for us is like you bought a ticket to a comedy show, so you must like to laugh. And then the rest of it is the magic trick of like, I just said a sentence that kind of sounded like I would just make it up off the top of my head, but in reality, we're like chopping it up. Like,
Right,
how do I say this thing, but in the best way,
right.
to try and get you to involuntarily laugh.
I've been like for the last few months actually like been like studying hypnosis. Like I don't know. I go down these like crazy trails and like end up in like some wild places, but yeah, I think the hypnosis stuff is super fascinating, dude. And like if you look at like NLP, natural language processing and linguistics and all
Yeah.
that stuff, like one of the is that the instant you start telling a story, you have already hypnotized people. Like that's the first sort of step to hypnosis. Like the moment that they've like switched from their reality to diving into your story, you've already hypnotized them.
Mm,
Like achieved the first part of it. And I was like, yeah, that actually seems right to me because they've like suspended their reality for a minute to come into your world and you've like got them, right? And then so the rest of it is like these little chain link movements, like in tricks. So I don't know, I find it fascinating, dude.
yeah, I was gonna say somebody, and I wish I could credit them, but somebody was saying like eventually when you're killing in stand up, you land in a place where you're doing the thinking for the audience.
Right,
So it's
right.
not that they're like criticizing each thing that you're saying. And I think you see this a lot with people who've kind of cultivated their own crowd. Like when some of the
Yeah,
biggest names, like their audience showed up for them, they know their characters so much in
yep,
a way that almost people are like starting to laugh at the next thing they're gonna
yes,
say because
right,
they know them so well and they're
yep,
buying in so much to like the whole
yep.
gamut. So that's
I heard
interesting.
I mentioned this on another interview with somebody, but like I heard Nate Bargatze one time talking about how it's stand up's actually difficult for him now because he's got all these fans, right? They're showing up and they laugh at everything he says, like so he doesn't know if the jokes are funny anymore, right? Because
What a problem to have. I hate that for him.
I mean, it's an interesting conundrum, really. Like, is the joke actually funny, or are these
Yeah.
people just like so enthralled by his every gesture and movement and word that like it doesn't matter what he says or does, people are gonna laugh, right? Like
Yeah.
his people are gonna laugh at him. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's like Valhalla for comedians right there.
right,
You just
right.
like I don't have to really think as much. I just have to keep saying whatever comes to mind. And they're like,
Like,
okay, perfect, good one.
yeah, exactly. He could say whatever. But well, man, let me. This has been fun. Let me show your website to everybody here, and they can go follow you on the socials and stuff. So the website is mikebyrdcomedy.com. Bird with a Y rather than an I. Mike Byrd. By the way, I got a theologian friend in Australia. His name is Mike Byrd. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, we talk a lot. I love Australian theology. I've always been into that, and we have a connection, and I don't know what it is.
I did want to talk. Let's do this here at the end of this. Like, by the way, you can go check Mike out on YouTube and Instagram and things like that. If you want to book him, he's got a contact button there. You can find out more about him, upcoming shows, and all the things. But as we wrap up this episode, by the way, if you're listening, we're gonna have a part two to this where Mike's just gonna bring a joke. We're gonna hear at the origin story of it, maybe workshop it, and then make some jokes up on the spot. But you'll want to be subscribed to the podcast so you know when that drops. But stay tuned for that. And here in part one, I want to wind up, I guess, by talking about roasting because this seems like a thing that you're into.
Let's go.
And let's just, yeah, like tell us about that. How'd you get into that?
Yeah, so I think it's people talk about love languages and it's almost as played out as a premise for bits nowadays as like dating apps. But if you talk about like the things that tickle me the most is like when I get in a group chat with my friends and we're just like kind of being mean to each other,
Right.
but in the most clever way that we can come up with. So I think it was a couple things. I am 6'2" now. I became 6'2" about fourth or fifth grade. But up until then, I was very much, you know what a squishmallow looks like? Just like this short, fat,
Yeah.
round. I was a squishmallow and then I stretched out. So I think I had a couple things. I got picked on a little bit early on and then later on became like big and likable because I knew how to like take thick skin and everything else. Thick stomach and thick skin. Later on, I think that was kind of like my really beginning into the roasting stuff. And then it turns out that's like one of the easiest things for me to write bits about because where'd I
All right,
lose
there
you?
you are. I lost you again. You said thick stomach, thick skin. Yeah, thick
Oh, good.
stomach,
I'm
thick
glad I cut
skin.
out on the punch.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's kind of where I got started in like just being able to write things that are funny because a roast joke I'll often use as like kind of warm up when I'm writing on something else because it's literally you take a fact about somebody and then you find out how you can reform that.
Right.
So your straight line or your premise or your setup is just like, you know, Mike lives in Gastonia and then you figure out a way to change that and I think I always laugh at it because there's a few different things you can stack, because my
Mm,
wordplay style a lot of times where if I end on a pun, so two things mean the same thing as my very last word, which I'm a big stickler for being like get the punchline to be almost when you're done talking. If it's the last word,
yep.
that's perfect.
Yep.
So I think a lot of times, you get the irony built in there and you get the wordplay built in there, and then you're being mean to somebody and people find that funny on its face as well. So, yeah, top of my website there was the roast battle that I did at the Comedy Store in LA for the Roast Battle League, which was really cool because I got to be on Roast Battle All Stars,
It's awesome.
which is like people from around the world and stuff. So yeah, really big on roast jokes. I think it needs to be clever rather than just mean. Like I'm not just gonna be
Right.
like, "That's why you got a muffin top." I'm gonna be like,
Right.
"Yeah, you work at a bakery and you have a muffin top." You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
then we're getting to a place
Right.
type of
Nice.
thing. So
I was trying to come up with a roast off that while you were talking. Mike lives in Gastonia, and as long as Trump's in office, it'll look like Gastonia. I don't know. That's good. I mean, you got to
got
be fast. Like, let me ask. So for roasts, do you guys get? Do you know who you're going against before you perform? Typically.
Yeah, so I actually have one in a couple of days, and I like this style the most, which is trying to kind of hold yourself to a higher standard and write about. not just the look of somebody, because a lot of people are like, oh, in the lunchroom we would be like, yeah, that's why you're stupid looking head, you know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
It's that's it can be funny, and I have some short versions of that, which a lot of people call it a rebuttal. Like you'll just have like the very first thing you say, then your joke, then your tags.
Right.
Or a rebuttal can be on both sides. You can have it as like an answer to their joke. But my thing for preparing for roast battles is they have like a questionnaire that they'll send out a lot of times. And so anytime I'm involved with one, I always suggest that, because you get some stuff that you're never going to get about. The guy will be like, oh, yeah. And then in my childhood, I was afraid of, Barbie dolls or whatever. And
Right,
you're like,
right.
okay, I wouldn't have known that by looking at you, but now I could play that off of the way you look and we can do a whole nother level of stuff. So I always write ahead of time, but I have some stuff that I come up with on the spot, because you never know what material they're coming
Right.
with. So you can reform something that they say for your joke and add on type of thing.
Nice. Yeah, go check out Mike's comedy, MikeByrdComedy.com. And as I said earlier, this is part one of two parts, two-part interview. So make sure you subscribe so you know when part two is going to drop. Dude, this is really fun, man. I'm looking forward to the next bit.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
Yeah, so for those of you watching, head over to michaelhalcomb.live, subscribe there after you go to MikeByrdComedy.com, and we're going to stop here and say we hope that. All right, dude, thanks. We'll go ahead and just jump right into the next bit if you're good with that.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna get a swig as well.
I don't know why it
And
dropped a couple times. That's weird. Doesn't usually do that, but
I have gig internet, and every so often, and I don't know if this is a ghost in the shell or a bug in the whatever you want to call it, but yeah, my wife will be on a call sometimes, and when I'm on a call, I'll be second citizen for whatever reason.
all right. Well, I'm just going to do the little teaser thing and then jump back into part two. And then, yeah, bring your joke and I'll ask you questions about it and stuff like that.
Do you want me to screen share it?
No, you don't have to. Unless you want to.
That's
You
good.
can.
That's good, because I think I have a lot of like stage notes on this version, and I don't really because it'll be like things for the act out and stuff like that, and it was notes to myself, so it'll probably be a little harder to read than if I just say it the way I normally say it. So
It's up to you if you want to show it. I mean, people might be interested in your process, but like, what is it? So it's up to you. Up to you. All right, I'm gonna go here. So, hey everybody, I'm Michael Halcomb, and today on the Messed Up to Setups podcast, I have comedian Mike Byrd back. He's gonna tell some jokes, and we're gonna make up some jokes on the spot. So stick around.
It's all messed up, yeah. Everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.